Hello, welcome to the C50 podcast.
Jay, Becca, Bella, and myself all know that mental health is important, and those sitting around this table are either diagnosed with a mental illness or support someone who is.
If you're anything like us, you may be listening to this while you drive, work, clean, or you could be doing many other things. We would encourage you to visit www.c50hope.com, where you can follow up with our podcast and get more help.
We have worked hard to build C50 into a ministry that can reach those affected by someone's struggle with mental health and a deeper illness. We believe that a relationship with Christ is key in finding hope. However, we're not professionals. Think on our words, process them, but never consider us more important than a doctor or therapist you may be working with. We would love to recommend professionals that value all your needs, including medication and therapy, and will also point to Jesus Christ as the center of your life and the way for healing and taking you from hurt to hope.
There are a lot of people that give to C50 that make this all possible. We have people praying, many that give financially, people that donate time or space.
And as an example, we've found a home for the C50 podcast, generously donated for us at McQueen Builders in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, PA. Let's call this McQueen Studios. And this is where we pick up today.
Welcome back to the C50 podcast. We're glad you're here. And today we're excited about talking about the support teams around mental illness. And around this table we have Bella. Bella, can you say hello?
Hello.
Karen.
What's up?
It's like I'm introducing like a basketball team. Becca.
Hey.
There you go. We are glad that you're here, and one of the things we're hearing is we're hearing a lot of great things about the podcast, and people are listening, and we have momentum, and so we're really excited about that. Keep listening, pass it on to your friends. I think it's going to be really useful. And what I'm really excited about is that there's somebody, based on the analytics that we get, that there's somebody in the UK listening to our podcast, and we think that we know. We think we have a little bit of a relationship with that person. So, but that's just really cool. The
It's
UK,
very cool.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And we had some people from Germany and South Korea listen.
I think anytime we get somebody listening that's outside of the Pittsburgh area, I'm
Right.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
Right. I see California on there. I'm like,
Right.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So today, what we're going to do is, speaking of UK, we're going to get into a resource that Rethink Mental Illness has put together. And Rethink Mental Illness is, speaking of the UK, is a mental health organization out of the UK. And what I believe is that they were about schizophrenia for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they solely focused on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, from what I understand, they switched over to calling themselves Rethink Mental Illness. As far as I know, they're a good resource. So if you're in the UK, or just online, right? The whole world is just a click away. So they offer good resources. I think I can't vouch for everything, and I don't think that they're a Christian organization. So when it comes down to C50, I think that we need to write our own outline, like we're going to go through today, but hit on some of the deeper things, which is a relationship with Jesus Christ. But Rethink Mental Illness does a great job with this outline. It's called Supporting Someone with Mental Illness, and that's going to be our guide for today.
Right. I definitely think they have offered an awesome outline and just good headings of things that we're going to follow through with. But we're going to kind of spin it off on our own, give our own thoughts and opinions of how we handled situations and how we got through different times, and put our stories into it, because we definitely have a lot of stories, right, Becca?
That's true.
So the first little heading that they kind of talk about is learning about the illness. So I'm just going to go off a little bit about this, but as most of you know, again, this is Karen talking, and I'm Bella's mom. Bella is diagnosed with panic disorder, and Bella was 12 when she was first diagnosed, and I kind of talked about this in Bella's story, but just to recap briefly, when Bella was first diagnosed, her dad and I, completely clueless, never knew anybody that suffered or diagnosed with a mental illness, didn't know much about it. So when she was first diagnosed, and even before she was diagnosed, when we started seeing her symptoms and things that she was struggling with, for us, we obviously dive deep into the internet. I mean, but you also have to be careful with that because some of the things you get on the internet, you know, you have to take it with a grain of salt, if you will. But we really just started researching and figuring out, well, what is panic disorder? What does that look like? And the cool thing was for us, people would have their stories out there of what it was like as they diagnosed with panic disorder. And we would see what their panic attacks were like and what they went through. And it gave us a sense of comfort because we knew that Bella wasn't alone. We knew we would hear other people's stories and we'd be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Bella's going through, or that's exactly how Bella is in a panic attack. And it gave us, in a weird way, comfort to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think when you start researching is huge. If have somebody that is struggling and diagnosed, definitely, you know, find different resources, be it either the internet or just different books and resources that you can really dive into. If anything, you're going to educate yourself on how to handle and how to get through situations. But more importantly, it's going to make you realize that the person that you love and the person that you're supporting, they're not going through this all by themselves. And there's other people out there that get it and understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that when Jay was diagnosed, it really was before we had phones and computers at our fingertips. I mean, it was only 12 years ago, but what was really helpful to us is to have a professional. He was a psychologist and a believer, which helped us to really trust him from our church. And he was a resource for us at that time. I think oftentimes when you're diagnosed, you're at that rock bottom place.
Right.
And so we needed someone to give us that information and to walk alongside of us.
So the first thing that Rethink puts on their paper here is learning about the illness. Becca, I remember with us, you said that we weren't totally getting on the computer and things like that, you know. So we learned a lot from books and from our therapist, you know. But what was it like for you? Because I'm going to say what it's like for me.
Sure.
What was it like for you when you started to read books about what I was going through?
Yeah, well, I am a reader, and I did dive into that. And you're diagnosed with a bipolar. Is it a specific?
Well, it's bipolar 3, which is it's more rapid cycling. And it doesn't lean more towards mania or depression. It's like bipolar of bipolar.
Sure. So bipolar, I remember as I was researching that's more of a chemical type of issue that you use medicine in order to regulate. And then the borderline personality disorder, I remember being so discouraged as I was researching that, because that's something that even 12 years ago they were saying you can't recover from. So you can use counseling, you can use some medicine, but that felt like a heavy weight to know that this professional perspective was that you can't recover from that. And even since then, they've shifted that through therapy and through counseling and through a relationship with the Lord. I know that we would say, you know, and through walking that dependent walk on the Lord, that nothing's beyond his grasp. So that for us was a difference.
It give you hope.
Right, absolutely.
Right. Because I think sorry, Jay, but I think sometimes when people approach it negatively, like this is never going to get any better, this is how it's going to be, this is something Bella's going to have to deal with her whole life, she has to learn how to handle it. And Bella, you can give your thoughts on this, but it can be really discouraging when you're trying to be well and you're trying to get better, and then you hear all those voices out there saying, this is something you have to learn how to handle and learn how to deal with panic attacks, because this is something you have to deal with the rest of your life.
Right.
It can be hard.
Right.
It can be very hard.
Yeah. I remember when, I actually remember when we were first researching panic disorder, when I was first kind of diagnosed, or even before that, we were just researching a lot about anxiety because that's what we thought that I had going on. And we read a lot about panic disorder, and we read a lot, like you said, like my mom said, about stories and stuff like that. But we also heard and read a lot about, like she said, that people would say that this is just something that they have to deal with for the rest of their lives, and this is something that controls their lives, and that they can't do certain things because their anxiety or panic or anything that they're going through limits them. And I think that was the most discouraging thing for me, because I didn't want my anxiety to limit me. I was like worried that this is going to affect my life this is going to affect me for the rest of my life. And that was my biggest fear, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing that you don't have to, I don't know, that it's not just one way, you know, and that's why we do want to share these stories of hope and our journey, because we don't have to be limited by what
the world tells us.
Yeah, what the world tells us. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I know this is what separates us from a lot of Christian organizations that deal with mental health, and it separates us from a lot of secular organizations that deal with mental health, because we say that Jesus Christ can get involved and is the way to healing.
Correct.
But we also say that you need therapy. You may need therapy, and you may need medication.
Correct.
Which other Christian organizations may say that you don't need that. But for me, when I was reading about bipolar and learning about it, I was like, it felt good, because like Becca said, I can take medication, and if I can figure out the medication, I can get a lot better. With borderline, you have a personality disorder, and when somebody tells you that you have to go through years of therapy, okay, let's do that. Let's talk about our emotions and dealing with our emotions. But you can also, for myself, what I've been doing recently is looking at my borderline through a biblical lens, saying, I just need to be more like Christ. I need to be more like a biblical man of God. And that helps me with my borderline. And so learning about my illness, really, there's like this medication view, and then there's this whole like Jesus Christ can heal you. And I think both of those things can fit together.
Yeah, and we have access to our Creator, to the Holy Spirit, so we can't put that aside on our journey of healing and recovery.
So the second thing that Rethink has down is looking after yourself. And I know Becca was like, hey, are we going to talk about this? Because this is important. And I know from Becca it's important. Karen, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and just let us know how caring for yourself is important as you care for Bella and as Becca cares for me.
What I can say about caring for yourself as a support person, as you're, walking alongside your loved one as they're struggling, this is actually something that I still struggle with.
Yeah.
I am still one of those people where I come last.
Yeah.
I truly, I have not mastered this at all.
Yeah.
I always try to put what I need to do or what I need to do to help in front of myself. So I'm probably not a good person to talk about this, because I do not do a good job. What I can say, though, with regard to the emotional end of it, you definitely, and things I have been working on, is you definitely need time by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
By yourself, just to kind of get through your own thoughts and think through your thoughts, and have time in the Word, because as as Scripture speaks to those diagnosed with mental illness, it is speaking to me just as much as a support person, as to help them and come alongside them. So having time to yourself to breathe, to relax, and whatever that may look like for you, be it either, working out or a yoga class or reading the Bible, you definitely need to find, for me, sometimes it's just taking a drive. Taking a drive by myself. And sometimes I can really just process and think through things when I'm just by myself driving in the car. But whatever that looks like for you, you need to take time for yourself just to process through everything that is going on, and how you need to love yourself as you're coming alongside and loving and supporting them.
Yeah. And it's interesting to note, like, you in a mother role, and then for me as a wife to someone who has a mental illness. And I think I talked about codependency a little bit in the last podcast. And just a quick summary of that is needing someone else to be okay, and the coping skills that we use in order to function in an environment that's imbalanced. And I think for me, the need to overly focus on your needs caused kind of a disruption in understanding the purpose of our relationship and my role in the relationship. So I became more of a caregiver instead of stepping back and being your support system as being a wife and loving you. And I crossed that line into being that caregiver.
Well, I know that, Becca, from personal experience living with you, right? I know that you have also come to a place where when you started to draw boundaries with your, what is it? Codependent no more. What is it? Overcoming codependency is your tag.
Yeah.
For Instagram.
You should know this, Jay.
I know. She talks about both like at the same, like on the like they're both awesome. But as you're dealing with your codependency, you've done a lot of things where you're like, I need this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this to be healthy. Yes,
it's true. And now that I'm thinking back to, looking after myself, I have had to take that time, like you said, Karen, and to just be able to disconnect and be able to take care of myself and take a bath or take a walk and read and just kind of take that downtime. So that's one way that I take care of myself.
I think something else to think about now that we're just sitting here talking and, all my thoughts are kind of coming back is quit trying to control everything.
Yeah.
I remember I tried to control all the outcomes. I tried to be on top of everything. I tried to think of every scenario and how to control it all. And when I was trying to control it all, I was drowning.
Yeah.
I was completely drowning. I couldn't do it. And when we because it's a team. It's a team effort, right? Granted, the diagnosed, they need it's about them and they need to heal and they need to find the ways to make them heal. But you as a support person, you are coming alongside them and it is a team effort to help in their healing process. But for me, when it really started to click was whenever I gave up control.
Yeah.
Whenever I said, I can't do this by myself, and I gave it up to the Lord. Because when I was trying to control everything and I was getting so inside of my own head, it was making it worse.
Yeah.
It was making it so much worse.
And I walked that for 10 years, that trying to control the outcome. And really, for me, it was self-sufficiency. It was the opposite of depending on the Lord and surrendering it to Him. It looked loving on the outside. It looked like doing kind or quote unquote helpful things. But really, I wasn't surrendering it to the Lord. And I was trying to put myself as the answer.
Okay, Rethink has a total of 11 points here. We're not going to hit all 11 of them. I'm going to already skip to 4, which is how do you encourage the person that you care for to get treatment? And there's been different times in my life that I've never tried to get off my bipolar medicine. I think I've mentioned it to Becca once or twice, and she was immediately like, don't do that, bad idea. And I try to take my medication regularly. But I struggled with accepting the fact that I got borderline at times.
Yeah.
I think that there were 2 times that I've said in my life, I don't think I have borderline, and I'm not going to deal with it. So, Karen, I don't know if Bella ever dealt with that or whatnot, but ladies, talk about, as a support team member, what it's like to be a support team member and go, you gotta get treatment. You gotta do that.
Well, like we talked about before, I mean, I'm inclined to want to control and want to be forceful. And so instead, I had to step back and recognize where I end and you begin, and not try to, I had to let you make your own decision and then face consequences for that decision. Because it is different, the dynamic between a husband and wife, as opposed to, I would imagine, a mother and daughter.
Well, yes, but no.
Okay.
Because, I remember vividly, I'm going to bring up a horrible story, but I remember vividly when Bella was just starting therapy. And Bella didn't want to do therapy. She didn't want to do it at first. And I remember sitting in her therapist parking lot. Again, just to say, I handled this horribly wrong. But I remember sitting in the therapist parking lot, physically trying to pull my daughter out of the car to go in and see her therapist.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to do it. And again, it was me trying to control and trying to, make her do what I knew she needed to do. But she wasn't there yet. So even as a mother, daughter, or parent, child, you can say, I'm the parent, you got to do whatever I say. But you know what? They have to meet you.
Right.
They have to be willing to accept what's going on and accept that they need to be well. And if they're not there yet, I can't force them.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I remember my thinking back in that moment was, I can do this on my own. Even like young like that, I was like, I was in a very selfish state. It's not that I didn't want help. It's just that I thought that I didn't need it. I thought that I could do this all on my own. And
it goes back to the whole control thing. Like me trying to control Bella and me trying to control Bella getting better, and Bella trying to just control herself, saying, I don't need anybody. I got this. And when you have that mentality of control, no one is going to be well.
Yeah.
Nobody.
I feel like that's a theme from a lot of people I know, that from the people that are struggling, okay? What I hear is the people around them are controlling them and saying something, doing something, making them do this, that, feel this way. I wonder if that's a really big part. And when I say this, kind of like the answer is yes. I should say that it's a big part to want to jump in there and make things better. Because here's the thing. I have my own mental illness, and I do that to people that I know, where I want to control it and say, because I do it and feel like I am right. And I had an instance just this past week where I was dealing with somebody in a situation, and I pushed. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And it tweaked the relationship. And I'm the one that's supposed to like understand this, and yet I'm the one that pushed, and I hurt the relationship. And so even I can understand wanting to take control or seeing control and how kind of damaging that can be.
So those moments, Bella, when I was trying to control them, be it either, forcefully try to get you out of a car to go into a therapist appointment, or when I was forcefully trying to get you out of a car to go in with your tutor to try to stay up with your schooling. You as the diagnosed, speaking to all those people that are listening today, what did that make you feel or think in that moment? What I'm thinking is it made you want to just fight me even more, right? And just want to go against me and be like, what are you doing? I don't, just make me, not want to be well at all because of how I was handling it.
I also feel like because, like you said, that you struggled with control and just controlling the situation, and what I was going through, I already felt out of control. And then I feel like with different places that I just didn't want to go to, I had that control there because I already felt out of control. And then having maybe that happen, like say you wanting me to go to school or you wanted me to go to that therapist appointment, like I felt like I was literally out of control of my whole life. But I also want to say that for the people that are the support group people and you want to control that situation because you love them so much and you just want them to be better, it's almost best to step back and let them make the decisions for themselves and let them fall because that's the only way they're going to learn. They're not going to learn if you're doing it for them.
Isn't that so true? That really, even if it's meant in a loving way, when we're managing and controlling and fixing, trying to prevent the person from hurting themselves or from walking down a destructive path, that very intervention on our part, when it's controlling, it's not going to help the person.
It makes it worse.
It makes
Sometimes
it worse.
what they need is to fall flat on their face
Yeah.
and to be like, okay, like I really do need to get control of what I'm doing.
And that is what I learned last year with Jay, that really I had to step back and really be willing to draw the boundary and let him make that decision and face that consequence and not intervene. And that has been, I mean, it's taken me years and years to learn this, but that is where we are finding healing.
You know, we are, and in our story, there have been times that I would say that you have been most impactful with a loving heart. Right? And so I wonder if at different times when people are ready for certain things, when all these different factors come into play, is there a time, Becca, that you say, boy, I just need to love Jay through this? Because we have been finding a lot of success with, no, you're not doing that anymore. But I feel like when you are loving towards me, that's also a way to help me with mental illness.
I think it's how we define that love too, because it's true. Loving someone is the answer, but a dysfunctional form of love in the form of control, fix, manage, that can be hurtful. But I think for me mentally, I have to kind of take a step back because I'm so inclined to overcompensate and control. And that if you share with me, for example, recently you're learning to share with me directly, I'm having a hard day, if you're kind of going through a low or something that's direct. And mentally, I'm learning to say to myself, okay, that doesn't mean I need to, we need to go out to a favorite restaurant, even though we can't afford it, or that I need to fix that. Instead, I'm learning to, okay, I can pray for him today. It doesn't have to mean my feeling matches your feeling. Just because you're having a hard day means, okay, how am I going to homeschool? How am I going to get through the day? For years, I walked the path where wherever your feeling was, my feeling matched that. And I've learned to step back, and it is not perfect. I do not necessarily do this well, but I'm trying to say, okay, Lord, just surrendering that to him, and just asking God to meet you where you are. So I think love is the answer, but it depends on how we think about that and where our motivation is coming from. So ultimately, it's those roots that are deep down in the Lord and supporting you in a loving way, which for me means talking to the Lord about that.
I definitely, speaking from Bella and I definitely feel like whenever I gave it up to the Lord and I surrendered everything to him, it helped, number one, Bella's and my relationship, because when I was trying to control and she didn't want me controlling, our relationship was very strained. It was very difficult during that time. And for Bella to heal and be well, I had to give it up to the Lord. So that would then help our relationship which then would make her want to, in love, and just realize that by surrendering it to him, it helped our relationship. I learned how to listen to her more, understand her more, love her more instead of controlling her. And by doing that, her response then back to me was, I want to be well. I want to heal. I want to work through this. Instead of that, of us just constantly fighting each other because I was trying to control it. So, I feel like what we're doing today is almost saying what not to do.
It's not true.
But I feel like this is a growing process and we're still learning. I mean,
Right.
you still have your battles and I still have mine on how to, because Bella still has her struggles that we need to walk through and work through. But learning how to give it up to him and realize he's ultimately the one in control and love them and walk alongside them. And like you said, sometimes you, especially now that Bella's getting older, she's kind of at that point where I have to let her figure some things out herself. And honestly, sometimes let her fall.
Yeah.
So she'll learn
Yeah.
and learn how to do it without me. Because one day the day is going to come, you know, she's going to move out of my house.
Right.
She's not going to be with me anymore. And I have to make sure that she's prepared for whatever may come her way. And that has to, a lot of it has to do with her mental, you know, being diagnosed. Like when you're out on your own, are you equipped? And do you know how to take care of yourself? Because I'm not always going to be there for you.
And I think if we didn't make this clear, I'll try to make it clear now. But when you say, I think you said you need to let them fall or something like that. Was that it? That would definitely be something that Becca, or terminology that Becca would use in our relationship. And we're going from a Christian perspective because all four of us here are believers and we love Jesus Christ. Doesn't mean that we negate medicine and therapy and things like that, but we believe that Jesus Christ is holding all things together.
Correct.
And so when you let somebody go,
Giving it up to the Lord, know that the Lord is going to take care of them. And I have to take a step back.
Yeah, it's not like you're going, okay, let go, free fall.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Good luck.
Right.
You know.
No.
And I know that. I'm not speaking for Becca. Becca can speak for herself. I'm speaking for what I've seen in the people around me that I'm trying to help. Because as I become more of a voice for this around the people that I interact with, I have to do the same thing and go, sorry, I hands off, and I'm going to let the Lord watch over you. And when you hit the bottom of that pit, he's going to be right there with you.
Right.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah, and that's truly what it is, because ultimately, when I'm putting myself in the position like I have the answers, it's my role to fix it, I want to control this, I'm putting myself in that God role. You know, that pride, it's, even as I'm saying it out loud, it sounds so pride filled. And instead, stepping back, I am not your Holy Spirit. It is not my role to control you. And ultimately recognizing that as my issue instead of pointing at dysfunction and pointing that at you.
So we were skipping down to number 9 on our list, which is how can I deal with crisis situations. So I'm going to talk from the person that is diagnosed and their point of view, and what say some things that other people have done in a situation of a crisis, which in my case would be a panic attack. So I'm just going to describe, I feel like, what a panic attack is for me, and then we'll go into what other people have done that has helped and what other people have done that has not helped. So for me, a panic attack is, I can literally, the best way I can describe it is I can hear my heartbeat in my ears. That's the only thing I can hear. I'm crying. I'm hyperventilating. I have this huge bulge in my chest. My stomach is going, it feels like you're on a roller coaster, but a million times worse. and you just feel completely out of control. And you forget to breathe, and you forget to really, like, you are so out of touch of reality and what's happening. And one thing that someone has done for me that I've noticed is not to touch me, but to just be like, all right, like, listen, breathe with me, and like go in and out and just breathe with me, and just to get me on that path of breathing, because so then the hyperventilating will stop and then the panicking isn't as bad. But another thing that has happened is yelling, or
She's talking about me here.
yeah, no, but you can jump in. But like my dad have yelled at me during panic attacks. My brother has been scared of me in panic attacks I remember one time we were in a McDonald's parking lot. He wanted McDonald's very, very badly. I couldn't go in. I was having a panic attack. He's like, what the heck's wrong with you? Like, why can't you just go into McDonald's? And it's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because that just makes me, I'm already in this this state that's uncontrollable. And just having someone yelling at you, you already feel bad. So it's like, that just makes it, I feel like, 10 times worse. So just giving them that space and just breathing with them, and just saying, all right, we're going to get through this, and then we'll talk about it afterwards, I feel like.
But I feel like from the support person, it's hard. And maybe that's just me making excuses for myself and how I responded to it. I don't know. But there are times I feel like, okay, I did a good job handling that. You know what I mean? Like patting myself on the back. And then there's other times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually, by how I handled that just made it 1,000 times worse. Made her panic attack probably last a half an hour longer than it needed to. Probably caused, I will never forget, I don't even know how many panic attacks Bella had, and I handled them horribly wrong. And then like 10 minutes later, after it's all done, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I love you. That was horrible. But you can't take those moments back.
Yeah.
So
the way you seem to be matching her emotion instead of coming in a way that
what happens is you get
calmness.
Frustrated.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's easy to get frustrated because I'm not diagnosed. So as much research as I have done, as many things as I have looked up, Bella's therapist actually used to say to me, I think you need to see me. But as much as I can look into it and understand a panic disorder, I'm not living it. Yeah. I'm not in it. So for me, as much as knowledge I may have of it, I don't really get it because I'm not living it. So it can be frustrating sometimes when she's in those crisis situations or in the middle of a panic attack. And right. So definitely yelling is something you do not want to do.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And there has been times where I maybe have been that patient, loving mom where I'm, helping her to breathe and help her to get through it. But it's still what I've learned most recently is I used to be Bella's person, right? I would be Bella's person that could, good or bad, but I was always the one that could kind of help her get through it.
Yeah.
And just recently, I realized that our relationship kind of got to a point, and Bella has gotten to a point where I'm not her person.
Yeah.
I'm not always her person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of weird as a mom because you always want to be that person for them.
Yeah.
But she is getting older and she's learning how to handle it herself, or maybe realizing that she responds better to somebody else than she does to me. And as a mother, that is so hard that your child is in a very dark moment, but somebody else can help them better than you can.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. That's big. I can think, as being a mom of 5 kids, I can imagine myself in that situation and how hard that would feel.
But at the same time, it's not about me.
Right.
It's not about me. It is about her. It is about her being well and doing what she needs to do to be well. So whomever that person is,
Right.
God love you.
Right.
Because you know what? I can't be all things for her.
Right.
I can't be. So that it's a beautiful thing, but as a mom, it can be hard.
Yeah.
It can be hard.
Well, I can relate with that as a wife in our role, or in my role with Jay. I feel like in the past, I carried the weight. I listened to everything. I neglected my own feelings because I was feeling his feelings so strongly. And now we have a different role where I'm not Jay's go-to person for his mental health struggles. And I used to be more in that role. And now he'll start to tell me something and he'll say, I need to process with my therapist. And he meets with his therapist twice a week. He's like, I'm going to process with her and then we can talk more about that. And at first, kind of that control side of me is like, oh, well, shouldn't we be processing first and then you can talk with her about it?
Right.
And really, I'm stepping back. Thank you for protecting me. He is my husband. I am in the wife role. And so I have to step back and be okay with not being his go-to person. And now I'm feeling thankful for that now that we're kind of developing this balance and more of a husband-wife relationship instead of me being the caretaker and him being the needy person.
But Becca, I can speak to your compassion. And so we could talk a little bit. I don't think we should today, but we could talk about how compassion, and I think we did with compassion codependency, and it's very similar. It looks very similar. But every time that I have a freak out, and that's the best way to put it, I guess, freak out, But when I freak out, if it's serious, you always take it seriously and will help me.
Well, it's different too when it's your husband and he's crying, literally crying, sitting or laying on the floor, not able to function, versus I think my child. So I think as I think about you, Karen, and then as I think about him, when I'm in that place, it's like, okay, what does he need right now? And I remember the last time, actually, when it happened in 2017, I called the counselor and I was talking to her on the phone, and she was saying, you need to do this. You need to make sure this. And I said, that's exactly what I'm trying not to do as far as forcing him to do something or controlling. And she said, okay, then you need to ask him the question, what does he need to do to be safe right now? And put that ball in his court. So when I phrased it that way, you gave me the friend to call and you asked if that friend would pick you up and take you to go to the hospital.
And I just think that it's important just to say, we're talking about letting people go and it's not your role and all that stuff. And I'm just going to say, not because I don't agree with that, but you just brought up a good point. If somebody is unsafe, you have to get involved.
Well, then it's interesting too, because then in 2018, there was another situation, same dynamic, same bedroom, same crying, same floor. And that time you called a friend and I called a hotline, kind of that process. And then when we were on our way to go get help, you wanted to go and get Indian, go out and let's just talk through this. And in my mind, I had to know that I reached the point where I had to go and take you to a facility and we had to talk with them together, even though it wasn't what you wanted. It was past the point of being
right.
able to
And
talk
because
through
that's
it.
In that moment, it wasn't just like you're having a bad day or like I'm going to let you work through it. And if you hit rock bottom, okay. Because we've been there and it's good. And that's how we handle a lot of things. But, if anyone out there is ever struggling with suicidal thoughts, self-harm, anything like that, threatening to take pills or hurt somebody else or whatever, that's a different situation.
Correct. And we're not talking about that.
Right.
Without a doubt, if someone is ever in that situation as a support person, you do need to step in. You can't just let them fall. I mean, you do need to come alongside and take control. You do.
Right.
You do, without a doubt. So
in that moment, they're not thinking clearly at all. So what they're thinking is best for them isn't at all what's best for them. So in that moment, you know what's best for them and you know how to take control in that situation. But that's Mm-hmm. So today during this podcast, we kind of talked between Becca and Karen, my mom, and we talked about their views as a support person and how they helped Jay and I, or how they kind of dealt with it and how to help other people deal with it. And I just want to remind everyone listening that we are not professionals. I mean, I'm 17. I'm still in high school. I'm not a professional at all in this area, but we are professionals in our personal experiences. So that's what we know, and that's what we share today.
Well said, Bella. We are speaking from our own stories and our own perspectives, and that's the way that we are professionals.
And another thing, I think finding good resources. I know there's two specific authors, Henry Cloud and Stephanie Tucker, that have been like therapists to me. And if you've identified with as being a support person, there's one book that I highly recommend, The Christian Codependence Recovery Workbook by Stephanie Tucker. And that's just been such a helpful book for me.
We want to be sponsored by Henry Cloud and Stephanie Tucker. To just have free material sent to us, and T-shirts, and you name it.
Really, how many plugs can we give them?
Yeah, right.
Anybody.
Well, I just to wrap it up, the thing here is to remember that, kind of like we talked about it today. Around this table are 4 people, and Becca and Karen are the support team members for. Part of the support team for myself and Bella. And then Bella and I, through our stories, become the support team for people around us. And so all 4 of us around this table know what it's like to give. Bella and I know what it's like to receive. Karen and Becca know what it's like to be worn out and whatnot. And the thing to remember is that, and this is where C50 Ministries really wants to put the focus, is that Jesus Christ is in charge of everything. He has everything. He's in control. When you hit rock bottom, he's there. When you're at highs and lows, he's there, and can take you from hurt to hope. If you guys have a story, if you're connecting with this, if you have anything that you want to tell us, go to C50hope.com. Go up to the top. You can go to your story or contact us. If you have a story of redemption, of going from hurt to hope, we would love to hear it. Would you share it with us? And would you contact us if you're struggling? If you got more questions about the podcast or what we've been talking about on the podcast, go to C50hope.com. You can find us also, this podcast, on Apple iTunes. You're listening somewhere right now, and if it's best to listen on the desktop at C50hope.com, great. If it's Apple iTunes, great. Wherever it is, we just ask that you guys enjoy it and pass it on to other people that might find value in it.
Thanks for listening today. Again, we have tried hard to share truth authentically, and we hope that this has been a helpful time in your life. To reach us, donate, share your story, and give us feedback on how we can do a better job reaching people that are struggling. Please go to www.c50hope.com.
We leave you with this. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. And remember, as Jack Miller said, you're far more loved than you ever dare imagine.